Welcome back. Thank you for staying with the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. The reported large pool of individuals who are desirous of becoming the SLP candidate for Soufrière Forcé-Jacques has just become larger. Former SLMDA Vice President Dr. Paul Caslendo has thrown his hat into the ring and says he is ready to return prosperity to the town of Soufrière. Dr. Paul Caslendo has confirmed that on the 22nd of January 2020, he sent in his application to the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party indicating his interest in becoming its candidate for the Soufrière Forcé-Jacques seat in the next general election. Dr. Lendo says this is the answer to the cries of the people, in particular the youth of the constituency.
For the longest while, supporters of the Labour Party in the constituency have been making that request for me to give it a go. I was a little resistant in doing that initially. The call subsequently grew, where the young people who had voted for the Honorable Herod Stanislas, thinking that he would have done better, started coming to me and making that request that I take on the challenge to represent them and to bring the necessary changes to that constituency.
Dr. Lendo says there is much work to be done in the constituency, calling it one of the poorest on island.
Soufrière Forcé-Jacques constituency, when I grew up as a kid, was the breadbasket of St. Lucia. Our economy has transformed now into a tourist industry, and you can hear the Prime Minister, the Minister of Tourism, and other politicians speaking of tourism contributing greatly to the gross domestic product. If you would note the advertisement for tourism, and about more than 80% of those visitors come to Soufrière and Forcé-Jacques to enjoy their visit to St. Lucia. But this constituency has moved from the breadbasket of St. Lucia to now among the poorest of constituencies.
He says there are many social issues that affect youth in particular that he is eager to tackle.
As you would recognize now, that violence, gun violence is creeping into the constituency. And if the call is not heard, if the necessary employment is not created, if male marginalization is not addressed, if the growing closure of people's small businesses is not given attention, if that vacuum that exists among small businesses and the difference that we provide, the incentives we provide for investors is not provided to our small businesses, we are in trouble.
Before he even gets a chance to face off against incumbent MP Herod Stanislas, Dr. Lendo will have quite the challenge from within the party's ranks, given that more than a handful of people have indicated interest in being the SLP candidate for that seat, arguably the most prominent being former SLP Grosley MP and former Commerce Minister Emma Hippolyte. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force has increased its efforts to develop and maintain a good relationship with members of inner-city communities. However, one Hot 7 News team speaks to members of one such community to find out whether they share the same zeal to form a relationship as the police. This trip to the George Charles Boulevard in Marcia came after complaints of police brutality.
With all this talk of community policing, we here at Hot 7 decided to take a walkthrough of one inner-city community, namely the George Charles Boulevard, to find out what the residents had to say about the way police conduct their general walkthroughs of the community. Over the years, residents have complained that these general police walkthroughs are less than friendly. However, one community member, Gerald Weeks, also known as Bolo, said, "You get what you give."
I find about saying the police roughing him up. If the police come and ask for information, you do not know, you just say you do not know. If you know, you just give them what they need to know and you go on your business, because the police will not just come and do something just for no reason. It's either they're looking for somebody, or you know where they are, or you don't know where they are. You just say you don't know. Or just show what police are asking people. You just show. It's how you treat yourself, it's how you get the treat by the police. You know what I'm saying? If you do something bad, people coming for you, and they're looking for you, and you run around, and they find you, they'll find some kind of way to mistreat whoever, whatever. But if you do have nothing with the police can ask you to do nothing to that. You know what I'm saying? But for now, it's how you treat yourself, is how the police treat you. If you're honest enough, the police will treat you honest. If you're not honest, then they're trying to find something out of you.
On the flip side, one other resident who chose to remain anonymous sang a different song, saying they're natural targets.
But that's the whole intention, that's the whole drama, that's the whole mindset, because they're like macho fellas. So any drama they hear from here, their whole tactic is hostile. Them people never come in and no reason, men know nothing, it's just hostile vibe. So how you expect people to get on? Not all like honor.
Coming from the George Charles Boulevard, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez reporting for Hot 7 News.
The president of the Craft and Dry Goods Vendors Association, Peter Ras Ipa Isaac, says the tourism minister is beating his drum and dancing to his own music about tourism numbers. But in his view, there is nothing to dance about for vendors who depend on the tourism dollar that he says has become increasingly elusive. There has been much talk about St. Lucia's record-breaking tourism numbers throughout 2019. The destination has also been the belle of the ball at recent travel awards. But the president of the Vendors Association, Peter Ras Ipa Isaac, says the trickle-down effect from the reportedly booming tourism sector is not being felt by those at the lower end of the tourism spectrum. He says the situation is still very challenging for vendors.
I don't know what is the problem, to tell you the truth. The minister could beat his drum and he could dance to it by himself. That's easy for him to do, because one of the things that might be sounding true is because the ships are in the harbor for true. But the reality about the question we need to ask is how people are not disembarking in the way that we would expect them to. This is a serious problem. And most of the times, to be fair, is that a lot of the persons are pensioners and so on, and we can't force people to spend money when they come in St. Lucia. But the reality about it is that some of those persons are very older persons, pensioners and so on, retirees and so on, and they want nothing new.
The government has undertaken the redevelopment of the Castries market to make it more of an appealing touristic site that can capture the interest and pockets of visitors. Isaac says while he does not know what will remedy the current predicament for craft and dry goods vendors, he says it does not change the fact that record figures do not equate to record earnings for the little man who depends on the tourism sector.
So the reality about it is that industry is an industry I'm in. I've been in it for years, but it's getting harder and harder for every one of us in that industry. And to tell you the truth, it's just sometimes we just come down here, put out our goods, and we're just looking at people pass. And some of them even reminding us that they are not buying anything, they're just looking. So, Mr. Minister, you're probably right in one sense that the boats are coming and the hotels have people in it, but I don't know if it's really redounding, and I'm sure it's not redounding to more monies in our pockets and more people disembarking from these ships, especially the cruise ship people, and to come ashore so that we might be able to realize that, if they have money to spend or whatever.
In his New Year address, Prime Minister Alan Chasney indicated that cruise tourism arrivals have hit record numbers and that efforts are afoot to bolster that growth. Following a memorandum of understanding between the government, Carnival Corporation and Royal Caribbean Cruises, a visiting team is expected to look at the proposed projects to improve the quality of Port Castries and a new cruise home port in Vieux-Fort. Following a statement from the Pan American Health Organization Director, Dr. Carissa Etienne, the president of the Diabetes Association, Andrew Felix, reached out to Hot 7 TV News to issue a statement of his own. Felix says though he understands the limitations which face Caribbean countries during disease outbreaks due to their tourism-based economies, he believes various health ministries throughout the region should address virus outbreaks on a community level.
According to President of the Diabetes Association, Andrew Felix, St. Lucia's health infrastructure is in no position to handle an outbreak of the coronavirus or any other viral disease for that matter. He underscores that this limitation is in no way reflective of the willingness of the health authorities to address a potential outbreak, but instead reflects the capacity of current resources to limit the spread of a viral disease in a tourism-based economy.
I believe that the doctors, nurses, Ministry of Health are doing the best they can do with the resources that they have, because they have limited resources. So with the resources that they've got, they're going to do the best they can do. But unfortunately, the question has to be asked, can we cope? We will be able to cope if there was an outbreak in St. Lucia. And the answer is right now, no. All those viruses that are going around, they may pass it, but because we only focus on one thing, and that's tourism. So if we're only focusing on tourism, what do you think is going to happen? Especially when they're saying that the virus is not, there's no indication of the virus for 2 or 3 days when you've got it. Come on, man. Everyone needs to start reading and wake up.
Felix says contrary to suggestions made by the Pan American Health Organization, though implementation of national disease intervention efforts would impact the spread of disease, a greater impact can be made with grassroots interventions where health officials engage communities with personalized preparedness measures. However, in the meantime, he encourages members of the public to take initiative and utilize the wealth of information already available in the media.
Why can't you just do that to have a responsibility for your family? Everyone needs to have a responsibility for their own family and their own household. Stop waiting on government. And I feel that the problem that we have in St. Lucia, we're still waiting on government, still waiting on Ministry of Health, still leaning on doctors and nurses, when we have to have our own care and our own interest at heart. It's not just about the government, it's not about the Ministry of Health. We're doing the best we can do as individuals. Ministry of Health are doing what they can do, doctors and nurses are doing what they can do, but we as individuals, we need to wake up. We need to do what we can do. We need to sanitize our hands, clean outside our drains, and protect ourselves and our loved ones.
As the coronavirus continues to spread, the Caribbean region has not been put on a list of at-risk regions, although the WHO has reported the likeliness of a global spread to be very high. For Hot 7 News, I am Jacqueline.
This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more coming up after the break.